Hello guys, today we are gonna watch from Oversimplified. So yeah, this is gonna be pretty cool. I wanna check him out and see. I've seen this video plenty of times, but I'm gonna give my commentary and just like some background info, that kind of stuff. Now, without further ado, let's start this video.
I've decided that in order to sell more merch, I should do a face reveal wearing some of it. So are you ready? Here we go. Boom. New Minimalist and Cold War merch available now, and get the new limited edition Churchill character pin before it sells out, with more characters coming in the future. Link in the description down below.
I'll turn it up a bit.
The year is 1917. Fighting rages on the Eastern Front of the First World War.
The Eastern Front is pretty big. Pretty sure it was in the millions.
Germany and Russia are on the brink of collapse. Soldier, I need you to bring me this man. Got it. Found him, sir. What? No, not Lenin. Lenin.
Yeah, this is pretty. Yeah, like so there was Lenin and Lenin, So yeah, there was Lenin, Lenin. That's like in the 60s. No, that's like 30 years. After Lenin.
Lenin, the Russian communist. What? Why would I need a beetle? Lenin, the Russian communist. He was exiled to Switzerland. You know what? I'll do it myself.
Capitalism.
Who wants to start a revolution?
Before we begin, I just want to give my take on communism. In my opinion, capitalism may be a flawed system, but compared the two, it makes capitalism just look like something God created. Communism is just so awful. It's such a terrible system and it lies to so many people. I hate communism. I think it's the worst system we've ever had. I think it's worse than fascism. Because at least, fascism didn't kill as many people. Communism killed millions and was just a terrible system that was very harmful towards people. The whole concept of it is just, it's not reality. It's kind of like, they're trying to change the perception of reality, but you can't. The real world exists.
The Germans put Lenin on a train and sent him all the way back to Russia, hoping he and his mates would create an internal crisis. And create an internal crisis they did. The government was overthrown, and Lenin was in charge. He immediately pulled out of the First World War, made the country communist, started a 3-year-long civil war, got shot, broke the economy, caused a famine, and then he died. On his deathbed he said...
Oh, by the way, real quick.
Got shot, broke the economy, caused a famine...
Okay, so, real quick. Ukraine was, for a slightly moment of time in 1920, independent from, Russia, so, I don't know how accurate that would be. I feel like Ukraine would be out for, at least a bit.
Famine, and then he died. On his deathbed he said, "Hey man, tell whoever's in charge of giving people jobs not to let that jerk Stalin become the next leader." By the way, who did I put in charge of giving people jobs?
That would be Stalin, sir.
That would be Stalin, sir.
Blech.
Stalin was a rising force in the Communist Party. He still had some opponents, but conveniently, all of them were arrested or disappeared. So that was lucky. And so Stalin took over. He implemented his 5-year plans, which transformed the country from an agriculture-based economy to an industrial one. And like Lenin before him, he reigned with terror. Anyone who dared criticize or oppose him would either be killed or left to rot in the horrendous...
So yeah, I talked about Stalin in my previous series a long time ago. It is pretty, Stalin did a lot of awful. He probably contributed the most to the destructive, the death count of communism, He probably contributed the most to the blood and death around. Really awful person. Just kind of sad to see that someone like that was able to be so powerful.
Soviet work camps. Then a short man with a silly mustache tried to take over the world, punched the Russians all the way to Moscow, and then the Russians was...
Look, that's that's bigger than all the German lands. Oh my.
Some help from their faithful ally, the Winter, punched them all the way back to Berlin. At this point, being allies, America, the UK, and the Soviet Union were good chums. They held a couple of conferences near the end of the war to decide what would happen next. Hey, Stalin, after all your trials and tribulation, you must be pretty happy to be standing here in Berlin. Tsar Alexander made it all the way to Paris.
If you don't know what that reference is, Tsar Alexander was back in the Napoleonic Wars. He was able to get all the way to Paris.
Just give me a second. Hey, man, I think something's up with Stalin. I know, right? What should we do? Shall I tell him about the bomb? Yeah, tell him about the bomb. That will scare him. So, we got this crazy new big A-bomb that can destroy an entire city.
I believe the names of the two bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were like Little Boy and Fat Man.
One go. Yes, my spies told me already. Oh, wait, I meant to act surprised. Wow, that's amazing.
Believe it or not, he actually acted like this in front of the ally, like in front of these guys. It's actually kind of funny. Like, there's some recordings where he's just like being a complete idiot.
And what lovely weather we are having. Oh, yes, indeed. You are doing really well, Joseph. Just make sure to smile. What? No, you weren't supposed to repeat that. All that.
I don't know if that was his exact words there. I think it is true when he was like, Tsar Alexander made it all the way to Paris. Like, he did say that, but I don't know if he said that part.
He already knew. How? Am I sure I want to send nuclear secrets via unsecure public coffee shop Wi-Fi?
Starducks. Whoa. Makes sense because a star. Communist, you know?
Am I ever? Dude, use a VPN. And speaking of VPNs, also A stand for atomic or ass.
The A stand, yeah, it stands for atomic.
Then America dropped their big A-bomb on Japan, and World War II officially came to an end. Hooray, we won! Okay, so now it's time to establish the new world order. Stalin, you're in charge of Eastern Europe. Now, we want you to let them all hold elections. Oh yes, of course.
Yes, fair elections.
Elections. And these elections will be free and fair, right? Oh yes.
Yeah.
Free and fair. Definitely free and fair. Communist, 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 communist.
And Yugoslavia was highly influenced in the communism. I'm pretty sure they weren't really that much in the Iron Curtain, but they were highly participating in the influence, basically.
If that's not free and fair, I don't know what is. Throughout Eastern Europe, Soviet puppet governments were established as a buffer zone between
the Eastern Bloc. All that land, that's just crazy to think about. How all that land, all these millions and millions of people were in communist nations.
the USSR and the West, with Churchill proclaiming an Iron Curtain had descended across the continent. The relationship between the old allies was deteriorating fast. Over the next few years, the British intervened in the Greek Civil War to prevent a communist takeover. In Turkey, the Russians began demanding more control of Turkey's sea access routes, which prompted the US to send their largest battleship to Turkey for a friendly visit. After World War II, Iran was now occupied by both the Soviets and the British, with an agreement to both pull out once the war was over. The British pulled out. Stalin was like, you know what? I think I might stick around. All in favor of kicking Russia out of Iran? You want to know something? You guys suck. Pressure from the UN forced the Soviets to leave, and with the establishment of NATO, the Soviets had no doubt.
NATO, oh my. So NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, is so powerful today. It's so crazy how strong they've became in the recent years. Like, I'm pretty sure Spain's part of it, maybe Ireland, I think. Sweden and Finland are now joining. We have all of them, you know, like Romania, Bulgaria, Poland, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, all of Germany now. I'm pretty sure Slovenia, Albania, like Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, all of these. Like, it's just crazy. And then even Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, they're all joining in, and they've all it's just like double the expansion of NATO. It's just so crazy how powerful, how big they became. You know? It's just impressive, honestly. It's all American influence. Eventually NATO will crumble, though.
That the West was out to encircle and destroy them. And America announced the Truman Doctrine, in which they basically said,
hey, that's not the real Russia. Look, do you see the Baltic states? You know, No, this doesn't look like the actual. I don't. Wait, where's the Baltics? Are you not including them? Wow, that's so rude.
Those guys are not cool, cannot be trusted, and we will do everything we can to prevent the spread of communism around the world. Many view this moment as the official declaration of the Cold War. Back in Europe, everyone was living in a post-apocalyptic void brought
Rat on a stick.
on by the Second World War. Cities reduced to rubble, not enough food. It was terrible. This is great. The more they suffer, the more likely it is they'll turn to communism.
See? That was kind of the whole idea. The worse situations are for people, the more they're gonna be communist. Because the communist is literally made to be an extreme ideology. And let's just say like 99% of extremist ideologies are bad.
Dude, you're really messed up. What's wrong with you? My father used to punish me severely.
We talked about it. You could check it out on our video. Or my video. I don't have anyone helping me.
America realized what was going on and quickly made a move. Under the Marshall Plan, they sent $12 billion to Western Europe for its economic recovery. The countries of Stalin's Eastern Bloc looked on with envy. Hey, Czechoslovakia, you want to come get some economic aid? Yeah, but I have to check with my mom first.
That's basically like how puppet states work now. Or all the time.
Sorry, America. I can't come. This was a full-on economic battle raging between capitalism and communism in Europe. If the Western nations developed faster and better than the East, that would be a defeat for Stalin. So he set up his own rival economic recovery plan, which he called Comecon, and he also set up Comecon, which gave him more political control over the Eastern Bloc.
A bit more independent. Yeah.
But nowhere did this economic battle rage harder than in the city of Berlin. Caught over 100 miles behind Soviet lines, the city had been divided up between the Allies, and the western segments were still under Western control. East Berliners could travel freely to West Berlin, see the economic prosperity, and think, maybe this communism thing ain't so great after all. I'm gonna have fun tonight.
Yeah.
You're home late.
Look in the background. We have like family. I get what? Who would that be?
Oh, Stalin. I was just out with my friends. Friends? You stink of capitalism. You're out engaging in imperialist debauchery again. I swear.
Bro, they were just being as imperialist. Oh my.
Ivan, I can't keep doing this. Stalin wanted the West out. So he said, hey, guess what? I'm blockading all of your supply routes to West Berlin. What are you gonna do about it?
Okay.
I suppose we'll just fly the supplies in.
Yeah.
All right, Truman, you win this round. The Berlin airlift was an incredible undertaking and a major
Wow. 277,804
success
flights.
for the Western Allies. And Stalin
2.3 million. Wow.
ended his blockade of West Berlin. His aggressive actions worried the West, but not as much as this did.
Ooh.
The Soviet Union had developed their very own atomic bomb. The USA no longer had a nuclear monopoly. The world now knew that if a major war broke out between the two superpowers, it would be more destructive than anyone could imagine. So it was comforting when Stalin came out and said that war between the Soviet Union and the West was unlikely. Oh, wait, inevitable. He said it was inevitable. Hey, you know who I haven't checked in on in a while? My good friend China. Whoa, what happened to you? What happened to them was a...
For such a long time, China's just been an awful country to live in. You know?
full-blown civil war that had been going on since 1927. The People's Liberation Army, under the leadership of Mao Zedong, successfully defeated the Republic of China, who fled to Taiwan.
Yeah, but you know how they succeeded? It's because as they were teaming up together to save China, they betrayed them. You know, when the whole Japanese war happened in World War II.
Now, Communist China and the Soviet Union signed a mutual defense treaty. This was terrible news for the West. But wait, there's more. After the Second World War, Korea was divided along the 38th parallel. In the north, the Soviets set up a communist regime. In the south, America set up an anti-communist regime. Both were led by very sweet-looking old men, but don't let that deceive you. They were both ruthless dictators, and both dreamed of reuniting Korea under their own regime. Now that he had the bomb, Stalin was feeling a little more cocky, and he finally gave Kim permission to attack. The North launched a surprise invasion of the South on June 25th, 1950. With Soviet aid, the North Koreans
This is the first moment of the entire Cold War. That's just crazy to think about.
steamrolled through, taking Seoul in just 3 days and replacing one ruthless dictator with another. The UN were freaking out and quickly created an emergency force made up of troops from 16 countries to defend the south. The west still held Busan and made landings at Incheon near Seoul. They pushed the North Koreans out of Seoul, replacing the ruthless dictator that had replaced the first ruthless dictator with the same ruthless dictator that had previously been replaced by the new ruthless dictator. And the west then continued all the way up the Korean peninsula. At this point, China was getting worried that the UN may just keep going. The US had sent this guy to lead the operation. After winning the Pacific theater of World War II, General Douglas MacArthur's head was big and his balls were bigger. He reassured President Truman that there was absolutely no way at all that the Chinese would ever get.
I've also felt like they picked him just because he was a lot taller. I don't know. I feel like that would be also a good reason to do that picture, because and he just looks taller, and usually height. I don't know. We always see height as much greater value. The taller the better.
Get involved. Meanwhile, 500,000 Chinese troops were crossing into Korea. Nuke 'em. No. Nuke 'em. No. Ah, come on. You're fired. The US considered the nuclear option, but now that the Soviets also had the bomb, they didn't want to risk all-out global destruction. The communists pushed the West right back almost to the exact same spot they had all started from, and they ended up in a stalemate, where they remained until both sides finally agreed to work towards a peace settlement in 2018. Back in America, Americans decided they wanted a new president who would be tough on communism, so they elected famed World War II General Eisenhower, who was really hard to draw. It's 1953. Hey Stalin, how you doing? Oh, he's dead. He had a cerebral hemorrhage and his reign of terror kinda came back to bite him in the ass because he had imprisoned all of his best doctors and those that were left were too terrified to treat him.
Please enjoy your definitely not poisoned food and drink. I think someone did how Stalin I think died was he was just there in his room. No one came in to check or help him out. It was late for his schedule. They come in and see that he's just dead.
Him. The new leader, Nikita Khrushchev, called a meeting and said, "Hey guys, you know how Stalin was imprisoning and murdering us all for doing basically nothing? Yeah, he was kind of a jerk." I'm really not sure how this is news to you. Khrushchev went on a campaign of de-Stalinization. Statues of Stalin were taken down, Stalingrad was renamed, and Khrushchev announced that he wanted the Soviet people to be happy and would allow greater freedom in the Soviet Union. So how did that work out? Well, an uprising in East Germany was brutally suppressed, a revolution in Hungary was brutally suppressed, and demonstrations in Poland were brutally suppressed. Although he did finally allow some mild reforms.
Yeah, but to be honest, think about it. Still, he would still take down rebellions of people that just want to be free from the system. They're always gonna be authoritarian. I never seen a communist nation that's ever been free and with voting and fair.
Back in the Soviet Union, he permitted more cultural expression, but then began banning stuff based on his own personal taste. Modern art looks like a child urinated on a canvas. Banned. Jazz music sounds like the feeling of needing to fart. Banned. Your poetry is really depressing. How could anyone in the Soviet Union...
Let me try. I was sad. Now I'm glad. Life is bad. Now I'm sad.
And be depressed. You're banned. Khrushchev wanted the Soviet people to be happy, but not like that, or that, or that. Young people began enjoying a boring Western pop.
Why is there a fidget spinner? Well, I get it. He's just trying to be a little funny. But yeah, this is very accurate. A lot of the people want to be in the West. Because young people, they naturally don't really want to listen to the adults. They want to be different. They want to find their own thing, right? And they found interest in the West.
Pop culture. Son, remove that disgusting imperialist apparel at once. Shut up, Dad. You can't tell me what to do. Well, would you look at that? Turns out he can tell me what to do. The West had initially liked the cut of Khrushchev's jib, but world events soon soured relations even more. The two sides were spying on each other a whole lot throughout the Cold War. The KGB had spies and informants in nearly every aspect of Western life and government, so much so that whenever the US tried to send spies into the Soviet Union, the KGB were usually ready to arrest them on the spot.
Did you know Putin was in the KGB? 1975.
Members of the Manhattan Project aided the Soviet Union in acquiring the bomb. Some American officials believed they were on the wrong side. I'll sell you 3 secrets for $5 million. Okay, go ahead. The Allies are digging a tunnel under East Berlin to tap your communications. There's an American agent living at this address in Moscow, and sometimes, when I'm home alone, I like to put on my wife's dresses, sit in the corner, and cry for hours. Very interesting. In America, fear took hold during the Red Scare and the McCarthy trials. American values imploded as fear of communism collided with freedom of thought and expression, and communist kind of became a buzzword thrown around to describe anything people didn't like. Hollywood? Communist. Your next door neighbor's dog? Communist. When the grocery store cashier asks if you need a bag when you clearly can't carry 10 tubs of baconaise in your hands? Communist. But one area in particular where the US had an edge.
Yeah, the Red Scare was very just like that. You know, everyone was just blaming each other communism, and you know, a lot of people would have unfair trials, right? But like compared to Russia, it's nowhere near like the levels, which I'm glad, you know.
Over the Soviet Union was in its espionage technology. In particular, U-2 spy planes flew across Russia carrying out surveillance from the skies. There was a nasty incident in 1960 though, when one was shot down and Khrushchev was furious. Who the hell is this? He's a high-altitude weather enthusiast who flew off course. Okay, that sounds plausible. Wait a minute. Why does he have a gun and a poison needle? Because he's a very naughty high-altitude weather enthusiast. But much to America's concern, the Soviet Union appeared to be ahead in the space race. Everyone freaked out when Russia launched the world's first satellite, and then they actually sent a man into space. Even worse, there also appeared to be a missile gap in the Soviets' favor.
Oh, did he forget to mention about the dog? The first animal in space.
And Khrushchev was so confident that he even allowed the US to set up a technology exhibit in Moscow, attended by a certain Vice President Richard Nixon. Check this out. We have color TV. Yes, but we've been to space and can obliterate you with our massive nuclear...
A freaking telephone, yo, color TV. Honestly, a lot of this technology is pretty impressive. The Soviet Union wasn't even close in this stuff. You know, they only focused on military, but they didn't focus on what would make the citizen much better.
Arsenal. Check out this vegetable peeler.
Honestly, it's a little ironic. The Soviet Union focused on military and like just, you know, being all awful, right? That's kind of like what they were doing, but like they never focused on the middle class, right? The working people. Meanwhile, the USA was probably a lot more favorable to the working class, you know? You failed everything. You failed it. You failed!
Tensions increased further when both sides upgraded their atomic bombs to hydrogen bombs. And after West Germany was allowed to join NATO in 1955, Khrushchev set up the Defensive Warsaw Pact, strengthening the military ties between the Soviet Union and its satellite states. In 1960, Americans decided they wanted a new president who would be tough on communism, so they elected John F. Kennedy. The Soviet Union was advancing its technology, but it was also bleeding its coffers dry, and all of the money was going towards the military, not the...
Exactly.
Life under communism was still as hard as ever, and
Exactly.
Berlin remained a thorn in the Soviet side. The contrast between the economically prosperous West and the struggling East was clearer day by day, and East Berliners were still able to freely travel to the West. Now, many of them were deciding to stay there. Millions defected to West Germany via West Berlin, causing Eastern factories to lose workers and taking a heavy toll on the economy. Soviet leaders decided this couldn't continue any longer. First, tried this: leave West Berlin, or else. Or else what? Or else I'll be really mad at you. Yeah, no, we're gonna stay. Listen, man, West Berlin is ours, East Berlin is yours. That's just how it is. Kennedy felt pretty good about his show of American resolve. But wait a second, did you catch that? Let's replay it. East Berlin is yours. Uh-oh, Kennedy just told Khrushchev that the USA wouldn't interfere in what the Soviets did with their section of Berlin. So Khrushchev came up with a new idea. We're gonna build a wall, and it's gonna be a big, beautiful wall, and it's gonna keep out all the Mexicans. Those are gonna keep in these.
Yes, we're gonna build a wall. It's gonna be amazing, and Mexico is gonna pay for it. I can't do a good Trump impression. Let me try it. No, wait. I'm Donald J. Trump.
Oh, sorry. It's gonna keep in all the Mexicans. On August 13th, 1961, Berliners woke up to find their city divided into two, with barbed wire and guards blocking the border between East and West. Over time, a wall was constructed throughout the city. Families were torn apart. Thousands would risk their lives escaping over the wall, and hundreds would die trying. To the despair of Berliners, the West were unable to do anything about it, but the wall did put on full display the failure of the communist system. As Kennedy said, democracy is not perfect, but we have never had to put a wall up to keep our people in.
It's just kind of funny. Why do young people want socialism and communism again? Look what he has done. You know, he's created some of the worst stuff that's ever been in human history. of the last, like, it's probably one of the worst of the 20th century, right? Why would people want this? It's just kind of crazy. I'm so confused, even to this day, like, how young people can just ignore all the tragic things that communism has done, you know?
As part of the agreement between the two sides, US diplomats were still allowed to travel to East Berlin. But suddenly, East Berlin crossing guards started giving them the business, and Kennedy was like, nah. In October, the US rolled tanks up to the crossing point at Checkpoint Charlie as a show of strength. The Soviets did the same, and the two were in a standoff. They stayed like that for 16 hours, and the world braced for nuclear Armageddon. Thankfully, though, Kennedy called Khrushchev directly and was like, hey man, this is getting way too hot. How about you back your
Imagine. It's so scary to think about, like, if you were in the 1950s, any second now, you could just go into an all-out nuclear war.
up by an inch and we'll do the same. Sounds good. Okay, how about you back your tanks up by another inch and we'll follow suit. Alright, hey, you want to do another inch? And they both very slowly inched away from the apocalypse. Phew, let's hope that's the biggest crisis of my presidency. It wasn't.
Alright, I'll get to part 2 soon. Thank you so much for watching this video. Once again, communism is just an awful system. So awful and so evil. Just kind of sad that we have so many young people that want it back. You know, people work so hard just to tear down that wall and to, tear down all that stuff to do with it. Well, yeah, so thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.